I appreciate what Ben was saying about God sitting on his throne and that King Jesus is still around. And we've been focusing the last few weeks about God is big enough. And when you understand the proper relationship that it's King Jesus that we're talking about, then I want to share with you the story that someone shared with me that I think is pretty powerful. She says this, and this woman's in her late 70s, maybe early 80s. I hope I'm not overestimating that. But she sent me this note. She says, about the God is big enough bracelet, I got one at the church several years ago and wore it always. And one day I had an opportunity to share it with a very good friend who was with me working at Fort Hood. She was having some challenges, so I gave her the bracelet and got myself another one. Now, 5 years later, she is having some bigger challenges, and we talk on the phone often. She lives in Louisiana. She told me this week that she keeps the bracelet on her left turn signal lever in her car. And she is reminded that God is big enough for anything that comes along in her life. Truly, no one can get in God's way, 2 exclamation points. God is big enough. Amen? Well, we're gathered here today because of King Jesus, and because God is big enough, I got something I want to spend a few minutes talking with you about, and it's this, that you can know the sound of the voice of Jesus. Now, with everything going on, and you know what's going on in the world today with, chaos and politics and COVID and also thoughts in your head, right? You can know the voice of Jesus. You can. I want to pray for you. Lord Jesus, I pray that you would transform us by the renewing of our minds, that you would soften and strangely warm our hearts, that you would unclog our ears, that you would make crooked paths straight in all the noise that's in our lives, Lord, and that we would hear you with crystal clear clarity. The sound of your voice calling our name, and the sound of your voice sending us where we need to go. Come, Holy Spirit, and have your way in every way. In Jesus' name, amen. Now, some of us here in this room might remember what it was like to have a radio that you had to turn the dial on, and that if you didn't get it right, you had all those kinds of static, and sometimes you picked up other radio stations from other parts of the state or the world. My first vehicle was a 1967 Ford pickup. It was yellow, and we called it the Banana. And the Banana was awesome. I'm sorry I got rid of it when I did, but there was always something better, right? And so the Banana, I think it was made out of armor-plated steel. There wasn't anything that we could do to put a dent in this thing, and it had an AM, the original AM radio in it when I started driving it in about 1988 or so. So I was 20 years old at the time, and because it was an AM radio, all of my friends had these really maxed out car radio stations or radio players, and I had a 1967 era AM radio. And so we turn it on, and you would hear all this static, and if you went through a low spot, you'd lose the radio signal. And a lot of people that may be of a different generation than I am have no recollection of what that is like. They don't remember the dark times when we couldn't get in the right radio station, right? And I also remember growing up, and I would have my CD player in my room, and I'd turn up, and I would listen to I wasn't a pastor back then, right? So I would listen to Boston, I would listen to Led Zeppelin, I would listen to Lionel Richie, right? And I'd have it turned up, and my mom and dad would knock on my door and say, turn it down, because they couldn't hear their TV station that they were watching in the living room, because we all had a communal watch party every night if we wanted to watch TV. It wasn't individual, back in the good old days, right? When we had all of the communal stuff. But it was loud, so they couldn't hear what it was that they were wanting to watch on the TV. And now everyone does have their own screen. Everyone has their own music. Everyone's got their own earbuds. Everyone's got their own device. So you get in a room, and every single person is listening or watching something completely different most of the time, unless you're pretty intentional about it. And what I found is that there are some people who have noise going on all the time. Whether it is music or whether it is a favorite TV station that you have going 24/7, doesn't matter whether it's news or Law and Order SVU reruns that are going on all the time, whatever it is, there's always something going on. So there's no space for quiet. There's no space for silence. There's no space to actually hear if Jesus might actually be calling your name. There's no space because we crowd it out with things and with noise, and the whole time Jesus is calling us by name, and we can't hear it because of they're solving a case on SVU, or there's another chaos report on the news, whatever station you listen to. Let's be equal opportunity. Don't get torqued up about it, okay? News is news. And so, there's all this noise. And then there are the thoughts in our head. Anybody else have a battlefield going on in your mind? There's always these conversations that are going on, or imaginary conversations, or you're thinking about things of the past, especially as we go into Thanksgiving and the holiday seasons, and past hurts get brought up again. The awkwardness of families and friends getting together that don't normally meet. And I know this is a special time because of COVID, but still the anxiety level is raised a little bit, and there's no quiet because things are running so quickly in our mind and in our soul, and plus there's outward things. So how is it that you can hear the voice of Jesus? Let me share with you some hope. In John chapter 10, that's the Gospel of John chapter 10, Jesus is talking to the Pharisees, and the Pharisees, they were good-natured people, but they had a form of godliness with no power. They had it all up here, and they had all the experiences of good church people, but it hadn't necessarily dropped 18 inches to their heart where it was transformed. So they were doing all the right things, but their heart was not quite in it. And Jesus was trying to not only impress upon them, but also the disciples, saying, hey, I'm the real deal here. It's King Jesus, y'all. Y'all may not get it yet, but it is. And here's what Jesus said. He said the gatekeeper opens the gate for him, because he's talking to a bunch of people who work out on farms in the country. And the sheep listen to his voice. And he calls his own sheep by name. And he leads them out. Each sheep has a name, and he calls their name, and he leads the sheep out. And when he was brought out all of his own, he goes on ahead of them, and his sheep follow him because they know his voice. And they will no longer follow a stranger. In fact, they will run away from him because they do not recognize a stranger's voice. Now get this. The thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy, but I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. So we're talking about hearing Jesus' voice. And to hear Jesus' voice, you've got to figure out, okay, what is it that Jesus would lead you to do, and what is it that the thief will lead you to do? And that's what Jesus does. He compares it. The shepherd, the good shepherd who calls you by name, will only lead you to have life and have it to the full. Here's what the thief does. The thief will lead you always to chaos. He will steal your joy. He will kill any happiness that you have. And he will just bring chaos to every piece of your life. That's not the sound of Christ. That's not the sound of Jesus. Jesus, conversely, says, I come to give you life and give it to you abundantly. So in the midst of all of the chaos, the things that are going on in your head, the noise that you're filling up your life with, as you're trying to discern, can I hear the voice of Jesus? One of the ways you can hear the voice of Jesus is to discern. The voice that you hear is going to lead you to either in a life full of crooked paths and potholes, or the voice of Jesus is going to lead you to life and have it abundantly. We have to be able to determine the sound of the shepherd's voice. For example, when my mom and dad call, they don't have to introduce themselves. I've spent almost 48 years hearing their voice, and I'm thankful that they are still around. And so when they call, yes, I have them in my phone so I can see it's dad or it's mom, but they don't have to introduce themselves. I know the distinctives of my dad's voice. I know the distinctives of my mom's voice. I also know the distinctives of my 4 kids' voices, even as they grow and change, how they say things and just how it sounds. And also my bride. I know the sound of her voice. When she gives voice from one end of the house to the other end of the house, I don't have to go, who is it? I know who it is. It's Michelle, because I know the sound of her voice, and I don't get confused with that because I've spent time with her. And Jesus says, you too can pick up on the sound of his voice. It's a promise that he gives you. So as you're thinking of, hearing the sound of Jesus' voice, what's one thing Jesus would say or demonstrate to help you understand it is his voice? There's a myriad of things, but we're going to focus on one today. And the one thing is shalom. Everyone say shalom. Yeah, it's a Hebrew word. I mean, the Old Testament was written not in English, it was written in Hebrew. And the whole idea of shalom is the understanding of the sense of completeness, of wholeness, where there's no cracks. Like back in the day, there were walls around every city. And whenever a wall had a hole in it or there was a crack in it, the wall was brought to shalom and the community was brought to shalom whenever those holes and those cracks were fixed. It provided protection. And so shalom is another word for divine peace. It's about wholeness and completeness, that if something is out of sorts, if a crooked path is crooked, then it's made straight. That's shalom. So practically speaking, I'm thinking of this week in preparation for Thanksgiving. I've got to go to Home Depot or Lowe's because our house is out of shalom. I got to get some doorknobs to replace. I got to replace some light bulbs. I haven't done that in a while. And I need to actually, do some landscaping around the house. So if someone actually drove by the house, it would look like someone actually lives there. I need to do all that so that our house would be brought into shalom. Some of us over Thanksgiving holidays will put puzzles together, like a 1,000-piece puzzle. Kathy Reif was sharing with me that she and her husband Brian, since COVID, and COVID's given us a great opportunity to do a lot of things, right? Putting puzzles together. And you put the puzzles together, and some of you will start from the middle and work your way out. There's psychological reasons why you do that. And then there's other people who start on the edges and work your way in. That's the right way. And so you're doing it, and the puzzle is brought into shalom, completeness, it's wholeness, no cracks, nothing missing, when you put the last piece of the puzzle in. You don't force it, you don't cut the edges to make it fit. The right piece fits in the right spot, and shalom is brought to the puzzle. I'm also thinking that, with all of that, it sounds great, but life is so complex. And there's so many different moving parts. If only life was like a puzzle, right? If only life was like going to Lowe's or Home Depot to get a doorknob and putting it on, and everything was fixed all of a sudden. Shalom also works through those different complexities, those different moving parts, and those relationships. If shalom is a noun where there's wholeness and completeness, also shalom is a verb. Verb is an action. So shalom as a noun is something that's given to you, but shalom as a verb is something that we do because Christ did it first. So shalom as a verb, that's the process of making something complete or restored. And shalom is used in such a way that we are called to be agents of shalom, of that completeness, of that divine order of putting things in its proper place. That get this, shalom isn't just from on high coming in and all of a sudden, boom, shalom. Yes, that happens, but also we as people who've received the gift of God through Jesus Christ, through his life, death, and resurrection, we have received that gift. He has done something for us, but then he does something in us so that we could continue the work that he has already started. So for example, to be an agent of reconciliation. If my dog Malcolm goes over, and I know about it, if my dog Malcolm goes over into our neighbor's yard and leaves a little bit of himself there, then to be an agent of reconciliation, I just don't look around and go, well, no one saw that, so I'm going to keep on walking. What I do is I go, I don't want a dog to leave evidence of himself in my yard, so I am going to go do what I need to do, even if no one ever sees it, to be a minister of reconciliation, to bring shalom, to be an agent of shalom. and continue my walk carrying Malcolm's remains. Okay? That's what an agent of reconciliation does. It's kind of like if a dog of yours or a pet damages a neighbor's yard, then what you do in practicing shalom is you intentionally take the step to be an agent of reconciliation so that there is no crack in the relationship and you give God all the honor and glory. You take the first step. You don't just wait for that neighbor to go, hey, I just saw your dog doing whatever your dog did in my yard. You go, I'll do it. And it reminded me, I wish I was aware of this when it happened, but a couple months ago we were in Denton and we parked in the parking lot around the square where we were meeting our older son for dinner. And we opened the car doors and there just happened to be a Mercedes that was next to us. And when we opened up the car door, the edge of the car door fit perfectly with the back right tail light of this Mercedes. I tell you it was a Mercedes because when I saw it was a Mercedes, I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be so expensive. That's what I thought. And so I was like, it's going to be okay. And so the guy got out. He was a little perturbed. He was like, you open the car and look, I just got this and my tail light is messed up. And part of the motivation was my kids were there. And also, I didn't want to get beat up by this guy. So I was really trying to be nice. And the first thing I said was, I'm sorry. We'll take care of it. And he was still a little hot and bothered because it was a Mercedes, and I would have been also. And it was like someone shot it, and it like spider webbed. And so I'm like, hey, if you'll take it to the shop, get an estimate, tell me what it is, I'll be happy to pay for it. And what it did is it diffused the situation. Now, in my mind, I'm thinking, this is going to cost so much money. But like I said, my kids were around. I was trying to lead by a good example. Also, once again, I did not want to get beat up by this guy on the square in Denton. Plus, my wife was there. I want her to still think that I may be kind of tough a little bit, and that was in danger there. So we got it worked out. And I would love to say I did that because I'm a pastor and I'm a disciple, and I was really trying to be the light of Christ. That's not the case. I was doing it to be a good example to my kids and to not have physical harm upon myself. But in looking back, I could have bowed up to him, right? And I could have never sent the payment. And I could have said, you need to calm down, you parked too close. But I didn't because, looking back now, I was to be an agent of shalom. It would not have done any good for me to make the situation worse. I just had to take it, be an agent of reconciliation. And actually, we had some text conversations afterwards where it was really cool. I was able to say, and I never told him I was a pastor, I was able to say, hey, Christ's blessings to you. Thank you for being so patient. It's been great to work with you. I'm sorry things happened the way that they did. And he offered a prayer for me. And I offered a prayer for him over text. A guy that I will never see again. But that's shalom. So shalom. And shalom reflects God's character. Did you know that? It's not about your goodness. It's not about my goodness. Oof, there's not enough of that. It's about God's character. That we are reflectors of God's grace. Later in John, the Gospel of John, chapter 14, I want to share something with you that he says that perhaps if you've been to a funeral, you may have heard this before. But the advocate, the Holy Spirit, whom the Father will send in my name, will teach you all things and will remind you of everything that I've said to you. So he's already promising on God's character that there's always going to be a reminder. There's always someone standing in the gap for you so that you never forget. The advocate, the Holy Spirit. And he says this, peace or shalom, so you kind of use that term, peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. So remember that completeness, that wholeness, that make a crooked path straight. That's what I leave to you. That's what I give to you. And I do not give to you as the world gives. Isn't that cool? And do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. So peace he gives us so that we will not be troubled. That shalom he gives so that we will not be caught in chaos. That shalom he offers if we will just have ears to hear. Now I want you to think about Thanksgiving this week. and the angst that comes with families. And once again, I know it's a crazy season. You may not be with your families. But if God gives us his peace through Jesus, and he gives to us not as the world gives, and so that our hearts would not be troubled, how is that shalom breaking forth in you? Not that there isn't chaos, but how can that peace, that shalom that surpasses all understanding, how can it envelop you in such a way that you may not be happy all the time because situations are different, but you can still have joy, even when you're dealing with family and friends that are full of dysfunction? And then how can you deal with the understanding that as Christ gives his shalom, he's calling you to be an agent of his shalom? That you would be an agent of making crooked paths straight. Here's what the early Christian church said. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come. Now, I would venture to say, if I asked you to raise your hand, if you've been baptized, you'd go, yeah. Then I would say, then the new creation has come. And because it's a new creation, you don't have to give in to getting the voice of Jesus mixed up with the one of the thief. The thief only comes to steal and to kill and destroy. If the voices that you are listening to are all about destruction and all about chaos and holding grudges, then that's not the voice of Jesus that you're listening to. The voice of Jesus comes to make all things new. Think about that with your family and in your relationships and in your thoughts. The new is here. All this is from God, who reconciled himself to us through Christ and gave us the ministry of reconciliation. So let me pause here. I would much rather, I'm just speaking to you as a disciple, I would much rather Jesus do all of his supernatural holy work and not make me be an agent of his reconciliation. Wouldn't you? I mean, to be an agent of his reconciliation means that I have to think about family members and friends who I would rather not address. I want Jesus to do his thing, but now he's saying that part of this gift that he has given me as a disciple is to now be an agent of his. I want them to approach me, right? I want them to take the first step. But now Jesus is saying that the old is gone and the new has come, and that because he's a shalom, that he's calling me to be shalom. I don't want to do that. Anyone else? Yeah, I want Jesus to do all that. Why is he saying that I have to do it? Not counting people's sins against them, and he is committed to us, once again, he's committed to us the message of reconciliation. We are therefore Christ's ambassadors. We represent someone other than ourselves, as though God were making his appeal through us, and we implore you on Christ's behalf, be reconciled to God. Friends, let me share something with you. I know for some of you, you have been hurt greatly. You have family and friends. You had a long history of hurt. You still have the scars. And so you're hearing what I'm saying about what Christ is saying, the shepherd to his sheep. And you're going, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. I'm not ready. Now, if they reach out to me, then I'll try to be gracious to them. And I get that. I get that. I understand that. The pain and the hurt of relationships run deep, especially with family members who have betrayed trust and are just frankly crazy, and we don't know what to do with them. But I want to tell you that even in that situation, and even in that person, and even in that history, and even in that pain, and even in that scar, and even in that angst, Christ still comes to give you the gift of shalom so that you might be his agent of shalom to someone else. You can't control other people's responses. You can't control whether they deserve it or not. You are not the judge. You are not the jury. To practice shalom does not mean that you put yourself in harm's way. What it does mean, though, is you put yourself in a position for God to use to break forth in a supernatural way to make crooked paths straight. You can hear the voice of Jesus. The thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. Some of us hear that really clearly, and we surround ourselves with noise that continue to double down on stealing, killing, and destroying. And Jesus calls out, sometimes in the sound of a great earthquake and gust of wind, other times it's in a whisper, and he calls you by name. And it says, Shalom, I am with you always, to the end of the age. That which you have received, now will you be my shalom to the ends of the earth, beginning with your primary mission field, which is your family. Shalom. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and all of God's people said, Amen.